Hey, Matt here. Alright, so it's been a while since I've done any kind of my weird outside of my work thing, creative updates. Figured I'd record this because I can actually show what I've been doing. So, yeah, me tired, getting ready for the new teaching term at college. Don't worry, I'm going to turn my face off in a sec, but it's alright. So, the last kind of big thing that I put out in terms of outside of my work hours was the Intro to C++ Make a Game course thing. Anyway, so what I've been working on since then. Let me show you. Let me get rid of my face. You don't need that. Alright, I can close this now. Okay, so, I mentioned maybe you remember something about Netcode, and I went on a journey, and it has driven me half mad, and home teaching and work and trying to work out Netcode is, yeah, it's destroyed me. But I've sort of come through the other end of it. So I'd like to give you a bit of a demo, and maybe we can work out what I can do for you with this thing for the end of it. So, alright, so what have we been making? Basically, I just want to make something that could kind of I guess a prototype that covered all the scenarios that I would like to see in a 2D networked game. I just checked that I'm recording. Let's go away that box. Yeah, whatever. Alright, so I just want to basically just take the assets from my first Udemy course. He's a little like cyborg guy. And he has a sword, but I also gave him a gun in this one, so he can shoot and slash. Little Zelda hack and slash 2D type game. But, you know, just make deathmatch so that you're actually interacting with other players and whatnot. I'll just show you what it can do for a bit. I'll let it kind of, I'll show you. So I got to run it multiple times. Now, first thing I'll show is, well, it's not that exciting, but there's this part here, host master server. Now, what a master server is in charge of is it hosts other games and it helps players connect to other players, basically. So I hit host master server. It's not very exciting. I don't have any like fancy window here, but there's this little status bar that will update at the moment. Eventually I'll put in like a list of all active games and players it's talking to. Anyway, let's run this thing again. Now for us to play a game, there needs to be a game hosted, so I'll host a game. Now the games get hosted on the master server so that other players can find it. Let's just call this my awesome game. I'll do host public game. You can see on my master server, we got a connection, and the server at the moment it can't play the game itself. I'm going to make it so you can choose if the server can play as well, because it's peer-to-peer games. Usually they're peer hosted, so like games like Borderlands, the host is actually also one of the players. So I had that in there. I just took it out while I was testing. So at the moment the server can see the game but can't interact with the game. Alright, let's get some players in there. Let me launch this thing again. Now I just put things where I could easily click on them. I don't know if like, UX UI is not my jam, but here we go. I'm going to make this guy. Pink's my favorite out of these three. So here's me, join game. Now when I hit join game, it talks to the master server, and master server goes, oh, you want a list of games? Here's the list of games. It's currently just one game here. So if I click on that, I join, and look, I can run around, and I got some actions I can do. I can slash, dash, and shoot 4 bullets, and then I reload, and you just got infinite ammo. There's a few things that I should point out. Let me go down here. Bottom left of this screen is your latency. That's 0 because I'm all hosting it on my own machine, but I'll crank that up in a bit. You got your health in the top left, and over on the right it says press tab for the scoreboard. There's only me in here. This is not a very pretty scoreboard. Sync packets. This is how often the server is telling me what the game world looks like. It's a bit fast at the moment, perhaps, but seems to be okay. Anyway, let's run another player. I should point out I have played this with people live as well. Anyway, let's beat up on someone called Greg. Join game. Join. Alright, good. They're over there. Now, let me go get this person. Always like to do this test. Now, I'm running circles around him. You can kind of see that. Alright. It's never going to be perfect, the motion that you see on the other one. So I'm playing as this screen up here. Whoa, didn't we do that? Let me bring everything back. Forgot if you wiggle the screen around too much, it starts to make it the only focus. I'm playing as this top one though. I'm the pink player. And you can see me being replicated down here on this player's screen. So they're being lerped. It's not like 100% accurate, which is fine. We're not doing like fighting game rollback or anything like that. But I do have client-side prediction on my side, so even if the latency gets really bad for me, I'll still feel like I can play me like a single-player game. Anyway, let me hurt this person a bit. That's what we're here for, right? And yeah, the score goes up. At the moment, it's drop-in, so you don't need to wait for a lobby. I can just throw another player in here if I wanted to, which is kind of neat. So I can do that. Why not? Let's get the grey one in here. There you go, grey fox. However you spell grey. I don't know in my country anymore. Because I have to always read American things. But I live in Australia and we spell colours differently sometimes. There we go. Cool. So he just drops in. We got 3 people running around. Now let me crank the latency. I got this cool little tool. It's free. It's called Clumsy. I think it's just an open source thing, and it's it shouldn't move things around. Let me bring everything back. At least you know this is live. Otherwise I would edit this out. Alright, it has all these little things in here, but I can emulate latency, which is kind of neat. So here we go, 50 latency. So that's one way. When's it gonna kick in though? How rude. It says it's on, but my latency thing has not updated on these screens. Usually it does straight away. Maybe I have not. Maybe I changed the code that showed that. But anyway, it should be running and running things quite slow now on each thing. So there'll be a little bit of a delay on what you can see pink player doing in the other screens. That's just because of lerping and when the data gets to the server and passed out. But it still looks smooth, right? This is at 50, and I can still definitely play at this. That's fine then. So this is the current state of this project. People said they wanted me to teach a course on Netcode. I have no idea if I'll actually teach it. I might actually just build some helper videos and sell this project basically, and with like instructions on like video how to add extra stuff to it and whatnot, because I'll show you how much code there ended up being. Look at all this. There's heaps of code here now. So much stuff. They're not short either. Some of these files are not clean and they're quite big, so if I was going to teach the course, I'd have to clean up some of this quite a bit. I should anyway if I'm going to sell it to anyone. Not for too expensive. I feel like this was a bigger project than I thought it would be, because I started it a while ago and I was using the inbuilt physics and animations in Unity, and turns out that was bad news. So part of getting around making this project work was to build some of my own things and use some things that already exist out there. So I'm using the lightnet lib plugin or whatever you want to call it, library. That's just so I can send data around and connect and do the NAT Punch through stuff. So the networking stuff. So that's not I didn't write that code. I'm just using it to help. Well, I have to make the engine around that, but it just basically helps you send packets. So UDP packets specifically for this project. And it lets you choose between reliable and unreliable. It's got a reliability system built into it, which is great. The other thing is you're supposed to avoid floats. Floats get rounded differently depending on the CPU you're on. So I've got this thing called sfloat, wherever the heck that is. Where did I put it? Oh, it'd be in the plugins folder. Or not. No, I think it was just in here somewhere. This project's gotten too big. Sfloat. That's part of it. That's sfloat. No, soft float time. Anyway, soft floats is what you need. Soft floats is the way to go. Oh, it's here. Soft float. Now, soft float. I guess the simple version of it is soft float does, it works with big integers and then kind of converts it back and forth so you have float values. So it's kind of like if you just multiplied a float by some sort of, say, by 1,000, you'd pull a lot of those decimal values out. It's kind of that principle. Integers get processed the same on every CPU, so that makes things more deterministic between different platforms. Because you might see like, oh, what? How come PlayStation, Xbox people, and PC people can't play together? Well, making stuff cross-platform is tricky because of a lot of game engines use floats. So to get around it, I'm using sfloat, this fake float system that relies on integer kind of work. I didn't make this. This is from here, but I added a few extra things to help me out. There's a few tweaks that I've added to it. The other stuff in this project, yeah, I said the physics engine. I did a 2D project and I couldn't get rid of the jitter. That's because I was using Unity's 2D physics. Box 2D is not deterministic. I think it's even got a slight randomization to the collision stuff. So, although it's well and good to pick up and run quickly, as soon as you start doing client-side prediction or any type of rollback stuff, I found that it was very hard to get away from jittery kind of stuff. So I just built a quick little physics engine myself. I've done it before, so I just had to find tutorials and convert it into this project. So it's just using AABB type of collision stuff. But that meant, let me go to scenes. Here's my game scene. That means I've made a physics engine that uses those soft floats, and that means if you go to level, see how this is big in red? I had to add my own collision system for objects and stuff, so I've added extra plugins and written my own little plugins and stuff so I can display my own rectangles, and these rectangles are, what do you call it? The my own thing, object rect, and they have positions X, Y, Z, width and height, and you can color it. I just wanted it so you could color it yourself, so that if you're making, say, a fighting game, then you can just choose what the colors of all these like kind of boxes are. So I've got, for some reason, I got the vending machine as green. Let's make it like a bright yellow. There we go. You don't see these colors in game. This is just to let you know where the collision boxes are. The AABB swept physics stuff that I'm using, I just adapted from like a game dev article, but basically it just works with boxes. They're not rotated boxes, and so the player has like a hitbox as well. It just works with just simple little rectangle kind of math. Just kind of nice, but because of that, makes it all predictable. The physics that I'm running is using my own floats, just like those soft floats, and using a system that I can control the order in which things are processed. So it makes it predictable. The other thing is animations. The animations in Unity are using floats and they get updated by themselves. You can turn up the auto update yourself, but you're still working with floats. If you're going to use Unity's animation system, make sure you have any kind of like hit or collision data stored outside of the frames themselves, and they get calculated via the netcode. But for me, I just kind of wrote my own animation system. I'll go dig that up. It's nothing that fancy at this stage. The prefabs player. I just have where the heck is it? Lost my own little window. Window. Where does your own ones show up? Oh, animation populator. Here we go. I have this thing. I have this thing so I can add animations to stuff. I won't show it off now, but basically I just keep track of a bunch of textures, and I keep frame duration is like how many frames they're on screen. Is it loopable? And that stuff's stored against the player. I don't have anything fancy so you can see it animated until you've got it in game, unfortunately. But that means it updates per game update rather than on its kind of its own schedule like it does normally in Unity. Anyway, let me go back here. I'll just go back to scenes. The other thing that Unity doesn't help you with is that it does stuff in its own time. So part of making sure a networked game does exactly what you want things to happen at specific times. So you want, for example, maybe you want to have maybe you want your game loop to kind of look like this. Maybe you I always break it by pressing tab for some reason. It hates that. Get inputs for players, local players, and then do physics, so like moving characters around, and then update animations, and then if you're on client, receive, well, I guess check for incoming server packets. So that's if you're on the client side of things. If you're on the server side of things, save game snapshot and send to clients. Because as you know, you just stick scripts on Unity objects and they have update functions, and they just kind of run whenever they have their own process, which is not that predictable. So what I've got instead is like, I don't use the update function on Unity except for like things that I can trust it to do that don't matter with the actual game. So I've got like a game object that forcefully updates all of the things that matter in the game for me instead. And so it runs through all the, like a big list of my game objects that matter, and they'll follow this kind of this loop through here. So I have a thing built for that. That's just for predictability. And then the way client-side prediction is, if I'm a client and I received a packet from the server, then I wind everything back to where the server thinks things is. But then I've had, before that point, I had probably pressed a few buttons. So I got to do client-side prediction to catch up. So I repeat those inputs to get back to where I think I am. But you have to trust the server. Server's got the actual positions of things of where they are in the world. So you gotta use it. So this is the stuff that I built, and it ended up being a lot of code. There's a lot in here. There's look at all this stuff. If you look on the right hand side, I made all these little things. The master server does NAT Punch through, which is great. So you don't need to worry about port forwarding if you're just a client and a game server. As long as the master server is behind a port forwarded thing, then you won't have to have players trying to port forward or anything like that. I built that in there. I got all this stuff for managing entities and whatnot, and it's become kind of massive, this project. So it may be too big to teach as a course, or if I did teach it as a course, it would be so long that I don't know how many people would complete it. It'd be good to get some input on whether this is something you want. But what I'd rather kind of do is, at this point, is just clean up what I've got, package it up, have some videos to explain how to add things to it and work with it and how it works under the hood specifically, and then sell that to people instead, so you can get up and running 2D games really quick. That's kind of really the plan. Look at this thing. This is the one that needs the most cleaning. Oh dear. My network entity manager. Oh, it's still under 1,000 lines of code. Anyway, that's where I'm at with things. So any thoughts and feedback on that would be great. Is this a project that you would use yourself? What are the types of things that you would want to see from it? Would you want it taught? Like you write code line by line with me to rebuild all this? Or are you happy just with instructions on how to use it? All these things. You just let me know. If this interests you at all, just let me know. If it's not your interest, just ignore this whole video, I suppose. And there's other things I need to teach this year. Art stuff as well. Art and code as much as I can around work. Thankfully, kids are somewhat vaccinated, so they're at school again, and I don't have to homeschool. Oh my god, that killed me. Put on another 10 kilos because of that. 10 kilos for the last 2 years. Like each year for the last 2 years. So I'm 20 kilos up. So gotta fix that as well. But that's not your problem. That's definitely my problem. Anyway, let me know. That's the update for now. Let me wrap up this video. Thanks for hanging in there. Hopefully I can make the Discord server more interesting. And Patreon people. Oh, Patreon people. Right. Oh, I should say this too. This little game project I will also release as a free-to-play game on itch, but I'll add the $10 tier people I'll make as a playable character skin. The $5 tier people I will put in as like NPCs that are just in the world that you can't kill them or anything. They're just there. So, and the $1 people, yeah, you get credited definitely. So credits to all the Patreon people that I've got. So I'll share that. Then everyone can play it online as well. When I put this game out on itch, it's not the fanciest of games, but I've already got it hosting on Linode and for personal testing, so it's working on at least a Sydney server. I live in Australia, so that makes sense. But Linode's pretty cheap, so I'll get an American server up and running as well, so people can just jump in and fight randoms online. Because all the games are public at this point. So if it's hosted on the master server, then yeah, you can definitely just go fight each other. Actually, speaking of public games, let me go back. Let me just run this thing again. Here. If you do want to do your own private servers, you can. So there was a private server in here. That means it doesn't get listed on the master server. And then to get people to connect to you, you'd have to have your ports forwarded, and you can manually get your people to manually connect through your IP and port. It's an old school way of connecting to games. Anyone who's as old as me is probably used to seeing one of those types of interfaces, but if you're young, then probably a lot of your experiences with playing online games is just matchmaking, which is definitely not built into this. This is old school. Like, go and join a server you want to play on. Alright, that'll do. Thanks for listening for those of you that did, and have a good day and a good year. Hopefully a very good year. Alright, that'll do. I'll shut up now. See ya.